Okay, so let's jump in whilst we're still collecting people. It's great to see everyone here today. Really excited about this co-creation on sustainable urban food systems. It's been some time in the making, ideating on it actually for a few months and working on how we might work together and bring our collective thinking to this challenge about developing sustainable urban food systems, which is a critical one. Maybe you people had that experience during the pandemic. I remember when I went out one day and there's a big queue outside the supermarket here in London, and that was quite a shocking thing. I'd never seen that before. The idea that, you know, the food comes from somewhere and it has to be stocked and has to be provided and so forth, and that might not always be the case. And how can we actually build much more resilient and sustainable urban food systems so that we don't end up with those sorts of challenges? We can actually build food systems that work for all of us and are resilient and can kind of face the challenges we're going to have going forwards. And there'll be many of them. So here we are. We're going to apply systems innovation ideas and tools to this challenge in this 2-hour session today. So great to have you all joining, and just a little bit of what's going to happen today. We'll be about 10 minutes getting started and getting introduced to our coaches and seeing what's going to happen. We'll be 10 minutes then talking a bit about the challenge today. We'll have Jill and Azra sharing a bit on that, and then the bulk of today's session will be working on the canvas that I'll show you in a minute. We'll be posting up our ideas and having a discussion around the key factors, the actors, the kind of changes that need to come about to move towards a more resilient and sustainable food system, and then a few minutes to the end to wrap up. So that'll be in total about 120 minutes today. Why are we here? Just to remind ourselves. This is to co-create a more holistic view of urban food systems, to help us visualize the factors and actors and the key changes and innovations that need to come about and be developed if we are to develop a more resilient and sustainable food system, to see the emergence of that. So it's trying to get that more holistic picture. We often narrow down and focus on individual solutions, often technical solutions. How can we step back and see the bigger picture, the broader set of factors affecting this, the actors, and the kind of changes that need to be developed and connected if we're really going to see the emergence of a different urban food system in the coming years. So the outcome of this, afterwards, we'll synthesize all our contributions into an infographic, and we'll share this back with everyone here. We'll share it also for the people who can't join, and we're recording for them. We also hope that you'll take these ideas and take them back into the area that you're working in or interested in, and hopefully apply them in that way. Also, this is a form of open innovation where we come together and we try to co-ideate on these kind of changes that need to come about, and hopefully we're able to take them away and actually put them into practice in some way. So that's that. We'll be looking at using some different resources today, drawing upon some of the work the SI Food Hub has done. We'll be hearing about that in a minute, but you'll find all those here. We'll also be looking at we'll be playing this game, the SI strategy game, with the cards and so forth. It's just to give you those up front so that you're able to find them. And there's also some external resources we drew upon in researching this, and you'll find them there. So there we have it. Just to get introduced to us, the coaches, the facilitators, but also to you. So we're going to introduce ourselves now, both facilitators, speakers, coaches, but at the same time, we'd like you to introduce yourself, because there's quite a few people in the room already. We've got over 40 people. We'd love to hear who's here. This is about collective intelligence. We'd love to hear who you are, your name, location, area of work. If you can maybe just put one sticky up to share that with us so that we can see who's all here. You might want to drop your LinkedIn profile there or link. This is also a networking opportunity so that we can connect and share ideas and so forth, and connect with each other. So great if you could work on that. We're just going to quickly introduce ourselves to say who we are. You'll see all these green backgrounds, and those are the speakers and coaches. There's also 2 facilitators, myself and Anya. who are with SI, the core team. Maybe you're familiar with us, and we work on supporting the community, its development, and so forth. So maybe going through the others, maybe Azra and Jill, you'd like to just say a word of introduction. Azra, would you like to say a quick word about yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Asra. I'm currently in Germany. I have been part of SI Network since some years now, and we started PutHub about 1.5 years ago. Our main idea is to understand and apply systemic innovation concepts to food systems, because we understand that food system is very complex and it needs a diverse and a holistic approach. So this is an effort at our food hub, and I would be happy to have you all sometime and interact with you and see how you address these challenges and what you think of food systems, and maybe we can help together grow this hub and also understand food systems.
Great. Maybe you want to put your link to there also, so people can find you. So Azra and Jill are from the Food Hub. They're going to be sharing a bit about some of the research we've done there in a minute. But maybe Jill, do you want to say a quick word of introduction?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Jill, and I've been working on food system since a few years now. I previously worked for a non-governmental organization and then in the research field. I'm currently working on food system transformation in the Sahel and West Africa, and I joined the Food Hub core team last year with Asra to make this system thinking perspective apply to food growing and to make this community grow. So I'm really happy to be here today.
Great. Just to give some location context, I'm here in London. Jill's in France. Azra's based in Germany at the moment. Adrian, do you want to share about where you are and your interest?
Hi guys, hi everyone. My name is Adrian Reed. I'm also part of the Food Hub team. I'm located in Geneva, Switzerland, and one of my passions concerning this whole area is urban food development and seeing it become something that is more than just a side talk or hobby, but a real driver of innovation for sustainability in our urban centers. So that's why I'm here and looking forward for the conversation.
Great, thank you, Adrian. Sanjay?
Hey, everyone, I'm Sanjay Rajan. I'm actually in Boulder, Colorado, USA. And Josh, you were right, it's actually 4 a.m. here, but this is something I'm passionate about, having worked with the US Department of Agriculture, as well as with Native Americans on the problem of food deserts. I believe our food systems are broken. It's too centralized, so we need to focus on decentralizing it. So I, among many other things, run a small boutique circular food systems design consultancy. That's what Conway.1 is. Nice to meet everyone.
All right, thank you. Vesna, where are you?
I'm Vesna. I'm from Slovenia. I'm working in Institute for the Development of Agriculture and Entrepreneurship. I'm trying to help farmers or to empower them to act as entrepreneurs because we have a common goal. This is the food production and cooperation with nature. I'm really glad that I'm here because urban agriculture is also part of my research, and I think that we should look to the system in a holistic way because we need to connect the perspective of farmers and the consumers. So I'm really glad that I'm here today to hear about all the ideas. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Vesna. So we'll hear plenty more from my coach as we go along, just to see a little bit about who you people are, who's in the room. So Rosanna, sustainability engineer, Henry from Sydney, Australia, studying food and agribusiness, Anya from the Design Hub, great, based in India at the moment. Julian in Barcelona, food systems strategy, innovation for resilient systems, change and transitions. Erica, UX designer, Malmo in Sweden. Miriam, Amsterdam, service designer. So we have Nadim in Berlin, facilitation consultant and podcaster. Oliver in Munich, working for circularity. Sarah, London, passionate interest in food systems transformation, regenerative agriculture. Amit in London, head of data in the charity sector, experience in UN, and so forth. Mustafa from Estonia, experience research and design and master in service design, interest in systems thinking, behavioral change. Eva bringing circularity, circular economy in India, and we have Azra in Germany, who we just heard from. Bert working on food citizenship and fair future food systems, living in Belfast and working for Food Ethics Council. Neil, innovation and constellations consultant in Liverpool. People in Germany, urban studies, Berlin. Great. That's what we look like. University of Bristol, interested in systems dynamics approach to nutrition and sustainable diets. Great stuff. Great to have you all joining today. And let's take a look at the game that we're going to be playing so I can explain that to you before we hear a bit from Jill Nazra to kind of frame the challenge today. So here we are. This is a new game, actually. It's the first time we're playing this. It's building upon kind of our overall approach at SI to doing systems innovation, to building innovation ecosystems around complex challenges. There's four main sections to this. We'll see in the center here, we call it framing. And that's all about trying to take a systemic, trying to understand what we're doing in a systemic way, moving away from linear thinking to start thinking more holistically and applying systems thinking to innovating in our understanding of the challenge. And the second section then is all about mapping the factors and actors affecting that dynamic in the center there, the challenge. So you'll see these cards here, and we're going to be using them today. I'll explain exactly how we use them when we get started. But there's four cards here. We'll see them on the side here when it comes to mapping. We're asking, what are the factors affecting the situation? Who are the actors influencing those factors? Where are the intervention points, the places we might want to intervene? And where are the places of high leverage? What's low leverage, what's high leverage? So that's what we're talking about there. This third section is all about the changes that need to come about. Now that we understand the challenge, the factors, actors, some intervention points, what do we need to do? What are the innovations, the things that already exist, the pockets of the future that we'd like to develop and grow? What do we actually need to design that's not there already, the new innovations? What are the gaps? What's missing in this system that needs to be introduced? And what do we need to nurture and develop, and how can we do that to grow the new system? So that's the third section. We're mainly going to be focusing on these two, mapping the factors and actors, and this third section, the change one. The fourth one's all about ecosystem building, how we build that into a kind of broader ecosystem. We won't be working so much on that today. It's mainly the two, the second and third one that we'll be talking about. So hopefully that's generally clear what we're talking about. So it's a little version of this bigger board here, and you can see the mapping and challenges up there. We'll jump into that when we get there. I'll explain it in more detail. And we're going to have our coaches as we go along helping us to animate the discussion. But I'll show you that in a minute. Before we get started, let's talk a little bit about the framing, the challenge itself. And we're fortunate to have Azra and Jill share some of the work we've been doing in the Food Hub about understanding these bigger challenges. Do you want to start, Azra or Jill?
Yeah, here. So today we have a purpose to understand how we can actually develop a truly sustainable food systems in the context of cities. Food is our basic right. It is also available naturally. One of the earliest skills we learned as human beings was to collect food and consume it. And since then, food systems evolved together with our needs. Now, in the changing world, with so many political, economic, and environmental factors that keep changing, the food systems are challenged. They are not so resilient to cope up with the changes, and they are more vulnerable to shocks. They need to be looked at through a larger lens. So it's definitely, that's why it's important to understand sustainability food systems in the context of urban areas. So our current population is about at the 8 billion in the number. It is estimated to reach about 10 billion in the next 30 years. Even with the current numbers, we have about 65, we have a lot of distress in the food markets. And when it's going to increase to about having 65% in the urban areas in about 30 years, definitely we need to understand how we can learn and develop truly sustainable food system for cities. We all know it is a complex problem, so let's understand how we can holistically approach this by understanding what are the macro changes through Jelly.
Okay, so maybe just to start with, so a few words about the macro changes. I think Asra already mentioned a few of them. So first, so we have to understand what are the broader changes that are taking place in the world of food, and that are today giving rise to the need for creating a system change. So first, on the consumer side, population growth and urbanization are leading to demand concentration and increased demand for food. Food system and urban food system have to meet with increased demand. Food habits are also changing based on modern lifestyle. Consumers are today looking for eating more processed food, looking for easy to prepare food. But at the same time, we observe that new concerns are emerging and improved awareness among consumers. So consumers are today demanding more quality food, but they are also looking for higher transparency. They are also more health conscious, and they place also greater importance on environmental sustainability. Now, in terms of supply chain, so globalization and industrialized food system changed the way we eat and the relationship to where the food is coming from. So as Sanjay mentioned it before, so the global food market is today characterized by high interdependency, and there is a huge disconnection between the production side and the consumption side, which is not sustainable. And finally, maybe just a few words about environmental sustainability. So we all know that food sector is responsible for a large share of greenhouse gas emission. It's also putting a lot of stress on natural ecosystem. And we also know that we are entering in a new area marked by scattered resources, while industrial scale agriculture is today dependent on many external input variables. So that's it for the macro changes section.
So now moving on to the different systemic challenges that arise with the macro changes that have been emerging because of the changing needs of the urban consumers. We can understand this through quantifying this through three main prongs, which is healthy food, then the readiness of the system to adapt to change, and the cost of climate change. So first, let's talk and understand a little more about healthy food. So healthy food, there is two different problems, that is accessibility and affordability. So since also Jin mentioned, and we all know that our supply chains are global, and then they are more interdependent with different countries and continents. They are not risk resilient. There are a lot of challenges that happen along the way. So if you see, there is a star here, and then there are four different main challenges that occur because of the interdependency of the supply chain. And also we see that because urban areas are more concentrated, there is very limited availability of fresh produce. We don't really know where to access and which pockets contain more fresh produce, and if the produce actually has the nutritional content that we would like. And then it also has a large amount of retailer concentration, so that it reduces our choices that is available, and then it also increases the price. And then the main other concept of healthy food is the affordability of it. Because of budget constraints, or maybe because we do not really understand what healthy food is, we tend to think that what is more pricey or what is more overpriced is something that is more nutritionally valuable. So there is this healthy food challenge that we are facing in urban areas. If you move on to the left side, which talks about the readiness of the system to adapt to change, So here we have three main categories which talks about which is the urban design, policy, and consumer demand. Now, Jill has also categorized the macro changes from a consumer point of view, and then because the consumers, that is us, we are demanding a lot of new changes, maybe access to new types of food or more vegetarian food or something that has more nutrition awareness on the packet. This is actually causing the system to not readily accept it because it doesn't have all these factors that can bring or institutionalize these changes. And then as consumers as well, we do not really have all the information that we can use to fully understand what is a balanced diet and make an informed decision. And for a system to change, it's not just consumers that can drive the change, but also it has to be driven through policies. And definitely there is a scope for innovation. Existing policies, they're not really sufficient and they do not contribute to the changes that can be instituted for the challenges that exist in our current food system. And then as consumers, we need to, this whole change can be a multi-stakeholder driven. So there is a strong chance for dialogue that can drive this policy. And also the urban design that is currently there right now, it's inadequate in structure, which means that there are no community spaces where consumers can interact or they can engage in these activities that they can interact about food systems. And then I just see that the board is moved, but anyways, I will keep going. So the urbanization is also has rapidly and very fastly developed, because of which there is not prepared infrastructure. It doesn't have these spaces for food systems friendly elements. The last is definitely the change, the climate change that is affecting the way we perceive food and how we actually are facing challenges because of this. Because of the unseen or unforeseen natural disaster, there are disruptions in food supply chain. And because of how the climate is affecting our soil and the way we cultivate, it has caused increased food prices because of the lower yields and things like that, or because of market inflationary factors. There are a lot of rising hidden factors that we see as well because of climate change. All of these need to be addressed, and for system to evolve, it has to consider all of these and make changes to itself. So if you go down on the systems change, that is how we would like to go ahead. On the right side, I think for a food system to evolve, it has to first evolve within itself, and then we can talk about how we can integrate the changes that the food system demands with other related departments, maybe through urban infrastructure or through policy or through international trade. These are a few snippets from the paper that we have analyzed and researched about the challenges, and we came up with a few ways that we can actually help a food system evolve. So if you look at it, there are 5 such major categories of changes that need to come about in food systems. So first is, now we always consider food through the idea of food products. We say, oh, vegetables, fruits, but then we don't really understand the nutritional content of it. So if we move away from just from considering food as whole products to also being able to understand the nutritional content of it and how it actually affects us and the balance that is required, then that's one way to go about it. We know that our supply chains are more linear, and it is stakeholder dependent, and it is driven by the middlemen, and then even a disruption at the starting point actually affects the last, that is the consumers. And we see that we are paying a lot of heavy inflationary driven food prices in the retail market. So more circular to moving away from this kind of model to a more circular and more local food would be helpful in understanding how we can help this food system challenge. So far, our current agriculture methods, they are driven by one single dimension, and they do not have diversity, and they do not also implement different approaches of food price calculation. So moving away from one single costing way, which is definitely more played by the retailers, to a more whole and elaborate food cost accounting, which talks about how the food has moved and how the value has been added and how we are paying. So it also helps us understand what decisions we can take and how we can actually make better environmentally sustainable decisions. And also for us, nutritionally, how can we actually help ourselves make better decisions from that. The current system is more fragile because we're heavily interdependent on various other geographies and factors. When something that happens, it actually very unforeseeingly affects places that are very far away from it. So our focus must be moving away from a very vulnerable system to a more regenerative and resilient system. And then and the overall, it just summarizes that we are a very centralized system, and then we need to move away to have more local and different individual bodies that can actually help us mitigate the risk and then be more resilient in times of disasters and in times of other things. So I would just give away to Jill to explain this about
maybe very briefly, Jill, because we're just
yeah,
for time's sake.
So, and now the idea is to question what can we envision for future urban food system. So here are only a few ideas. Maybe we can grab some of the sticky. So talking about the future food system, and especially the future urban food system, maybe we can envision a world where sustainable food production is encouraged. This means where organic and sustainable agriculture is remunerative for producers, where citizens are also empowered to grow their own food. Maybe where food business are also more value driven. On the consumption side, maybe we can also envision a world where all citizens are empowered to access and choose nutritious and healthy food. This means that the cheapest food, for example, should not be the lowest quality. This means also like tackling healthy diets that should be affordable and accessible for all. Maybe also promoting more food literacy. And maybe one last idea will be that maybe we can also envision a world where we use the power of urban areas to make food systems sustainable and more resilient. Maybe where cities act as action lab for food system transformation. Maybe a world where we use food procurement also to promote sustainable food production. So I think there is some idea, but I will give back the floor to Just for the next section.
Excellent. Merci beaucoup, Jill. So that's just a little snippet of some of the ideas we've been developing in our food hub. You can read more in the paper there at the start, and hopefully it's a bit of a framing as what we're talking about today, for which we're going to jump in. So that's the center circle. It's the idea of framing the challenge in a more systemic fashion. The second circle here, this green one that we're going to be working on now. So hopefully you've all joined the mirror board, and you've been sharing the link there in the chat, and hopefully you're with me here. If you have any challenges, any technical challenges or so forth, just post them in the chat there and you'll pick it up. What we're going to do here is we'll see these 4 cards as mentioned, right? So factors. Factors is play this card to represent a key factor affecting the situation that we just heard about. So how we play a card is we grab one of these here and we drag it to wherever we want. And we'll see in this circle there are 4 dimensions. Up here, it says economics. So enthused to finance, business, economics. We're going to put that factor in there, or an actor in there. Over here, social factors. We're including policy, regulation, education, culture, and so forth. Down here, we've got environmental factors, obviously water, climate, things like that. Over here, we've got technology. Might be talking about transportation. Might be talking about agri-tech and so forth. So we're going to grab a card up here. If it's an actor, or if it's a factor. So I've given a little example down here. A factor might be, we heard something about supply chains, lengthy supply chains. We're going to grab the card up there. We're going to drag it down, and we're going to post up a sticky beside that saying what exactly that factor is that we think is important here. And obviously placing that in the correct area, whether it's a social, economic, environment, and so forth. We might want to put up an actor, right? Who's actually the actor affecting that factor there? So we'd grab a card which is an actor. and might put it beside the other one. So, supermarkets are actors that are affecting this factor around the supply chains. So I dragged that down there. I actually connected it up to the first one to show that those are interlinked. Up here, we have then intervention points or leverage points. You can grab one of those cards and you can break down. I have it here. So I think there's a leverage point shifting the incentive to shorter supply chains would be one intervention point. And then there's a final card, which is about how high leverage you think that is. Play this card to assess the degree of leverage to the intervention point. You just grab one of those cards and place it beside the other ones. So when you're grabbing a card, you're dragging it to where you want it to be in those different dimensions, and then you're posting up your sticky as to what is going on there. And that's that. We're going to do that, post up ideas for about, let me see the timing now, maybe 10 minutes, so that we can all have plenty of time to think about this. So jump onto the mirror board, grab your card, place it where you want it to be, and put a sticky beside it, informing us about what you think is an important factor, actor, or intervention point. Is that clear to everyone? If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. If you have any problems with the mirror board, please do that. Afterwards, we'll come back and we'll discuss with our coaches who'll be voting on these as we go along. You'll see up here, the coaches are going to grab a dot to vote on which ideas they think there are interesting as we go along. And we're discussing that when we come back. Any questions? Put them in chat as we go along. We'll take 10 minutes. Okay, time's up. Welcome back. Lots of ideas here, a lot of stuff going on in the social area there, a bit in environmental and economics. So maybe we'll start with you, Sanjay. Where did you find interesting things you'd like to talk about? Yeah, we're just on mute, Sanjay. So.
I was just on the environmental. I've been scanning through all the various factors, pretty some awesome ideas. One thing that is getting more focus is soil degradation. So there has been research talking about the gut biome and soil and the interlink between the two. And so I think that's a very important factor. More and more people are realizing there's only 50 years worth of soil actually left globally, topsoil, because of the degradation. So that's a very important factor, in my opinion, that can that needs more focus.
Yeah, maybe Rosanna, would you like to speak a bit about that?
No, it's what Sanjay said, and yeah, it's a very complex topic in itself about the ecosystem, how it's working, what it's influenced by, about pesticides and so, and how the economics is around it. So yeah.
Okay.
If I may, Joss, it also ties to the one right there about monoculture. You know, monoculture has actually impacted and added and played a bigger role in terms of soil degradation as well.
Okay, great. So is it Adrian? Which ones did you want to talk about?
Yeah, I found interesting, of course, the whole issue dealing around the policies that creates, let me just scroll down here a bit, let me find there. Yeah, consumer education on the importance of less processed foods and fresh supply. Because at the end of the day, you know, food is consumed by people, and people are the main drivers, and consuming is the driver of any market economy. So even if we had all the system working as it should be, emerging new ways of doing things, if the end result, if the consumers' palates, desires, interests haven't changed, all this work would have been in some regard for naught in some regard. So I think for me, education and working on helping the populace understand the need for change and being willing and open to change is extremely important. So that really jumped out at me.
Where was that? Sorry, was it up here in social or?
Let me find it again. I think it's social. Let me minimize the screen. Yeah, it's kind of social, but a little further down.
Okay. Anybody want to talk about this? Who was posting on this?
The farmer protection?
Yeah. Yeah, right. I think we put that one there because we were talking about how the rights and the policies are designed from the top down, not from bottom up. And in some, like especially a lot of developing countries, where a lot of these state level workers go down to the farms and they ask for a representative to speak for the entire farm. And so there's not much of participatory approach to what a collective policy means.
So joint farming.
Yeah, for example, with various transitioning farmers who are currently transitioning from shift cultivation to agroforestry, or from some sort of traditional form towards more, slightly crop rotation and other things. Yeah.
Yep. Next thing.
Great. Maybe move on to Vesna. What were you looking at?
Yes, thank you. There are many great ideas, and we can see that the system is really complex. And I will just try to point out some things which I think are in connection, and that's why I was going for on one side farmers' income stability, whatever this means. What is a farmer income stability? We are mostly dealing with the free economic area, because agriculture goes with the economic activities. And on the other hand, we have a consumer, and the thing that that got my attention is the health. You know, in consuming, we have two sides. One is that parts of the world is has undernutrition, and part of the world is dealing with the obesity. So what is the health cost of this? Because it affects economics aspect also very much. And then I looked for the connectivity of these things, and it's a connectivity through a platform. So the platform which will join not only the consumers and farmers as the producers, but trying to interconnect all the stakeholders who are a part of this great system. And of course, everywhere we go, the one of the biggest leverages is education. So I think education is the one thing, but it's not in education in this, maybe in also in a formal way, but in a way how we are learning and what we are learning, because our learning affects how we will react. So this is the things I would like to point out, although they're really great ideas, and they are all over the board. They are not concentrated in one way. They are everywhere.
Good point. So on this one, would someone like to talk about this, Lucas? Maybe social justice. Few people mentioned, sufficient remuneration. Maybe want to share what they were thinking there.
Well, yes. I think the healthier, the more sustainable, and the more regional food gets, it gets more expensive. So I guess that's in many parts of the world the case. And we currently have a research project which evaluates the access for poor people to healthy food, and what's actually their reality in Switzerland. I mean, it's not talking from global south perspective, but still, on one hand, we have very low income for farmers, and on the other hand, a big part of society which cannot afford healthy food. So I think with the more direct marketing, we could link those two groups, and I see there a lot of potential. Also connected with the idea I mentioned, or Vesna also mentioned, regarding the health care costs. So I assume that people who have a low budget, eat unhealthy, create more healthcare costs. So I would be really interested in having a business case and to estimate the return on invest for state government for healthy food.
That can be a great innovation or change that needs to come about, right? Think about the economics of it and how we're paying these big tax bills for health systems, which are kind of subsidizing food systems, and that equation isn't really adding up properly, is it? And how do you rebalance that? And then I think you said connecting producers and consumers in a more direct way, and I think that's part of what you're saying, Vesna, about platforms, isn't it? It's an opportunity to really connect the whole system, but in so doing, connect the producers and consumers, and maybe rebalance that economic factor. It's a lot of that, maybe that disintermediation and the where that imbalance of the economics kind of comes about, and when you can start to really connect, you can potentially kind of start to rebalance that. Okay, great. So just a few minutes before we move on, so ones you wanted to pick up on here. Any other ones, Sanjay or Adrian?
Yeah, I think the one that I guess me and I'm not sure if it's Vanessa or Sanjay agreed on, and I guess they could talk on as well too, is the whole issue to shifting to make incentives for much shorter supply chains in terms of that's both the urban center as well as the peri-urban center, because I think when we think about urban agriculture, we don't really always appreciate the peri-urban dimension of the urban environment, and the cooperation between those two areas can really bring about the ability of having shorter value chains, of not always having to bring food over longer distances into rural areas, or even via transport from other countries in that regard, and really maximizing the ability of those two areas, both the central and the other area, the peri-urban area, but also building systems within those that allow for transport of shorter distances between those two areas, allowing and bringing systems that facilitate growth of food within the center and the urban center that reward them financially. So there's a lot of two things that go together. So it's the joining or the collaboration of the urban center and the peri-urban center, the building of transport systems that allow for that to be a viable growing area to sustain the food basket of a city in that regard. And of course, building economics around that that's affordable for people to do so. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Allow either Sanjay or Vincent to comment if they so desire.
Or anyone else who was writing on that, yeah.
Well, I support Adrian's point of view very much because the peri-urban is the nearest to the city, but I think the idea could be even more, even more innovative, or, why don't we produce by themselves within the cities? There are a lot of possibilities, like vertical gardens. Like, we need to shade a bit our cities because of the temperatures that are rising. We can have our own micro garden on our balcony or near the house. So maybe by joining all these ideas, we can all contribute to the production side of the urban agriculture, and interconnected with other beneficial outcomes.
Great. Sanjay, any ones you want to pick up on, or do you want to add to
Yeah.
that before we move forward? Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with both Adrian and Vesna what they said. Both the urban, peri-urban interlink sometimes is not a big focus, and that needs to be. The other aspect is in terms of urbanization. I mean, recently there was a story from BBC about strawberries being grown in Paris, urban Paris. Huge value prop, both in terms of having nutritional food grown locally. So I go back to very early on what I said about centralized versus decentralized. So more opportunities there are to grow in the context of urban area. The truth is, more people are moving to urban areas globally, so that means shorter food mile, which means lowering carbon footprint. So there are a lot of ripple effects in terms of impacts of actually growing healthy food in the context of the local. So going from the global, so it's almost like, let's focus on local in the urban areas, but do it on the global scale. that
Mm.
might be a worthwhile way to look at it.
Yeah, I'm just near me here. I'm in central London. Is actually the large, purportedly the largest urban farm in Europe. It's a real farm. Just behind me here, about a half kilometer away, which has real fields, real pigs, real sheep, and so forth. And people love to go there at the weekend or during the week just to wander around, show their children the pigs and so forth, and get the whole experience. So how do you kind of reintegrate that into our food systems, that kind of fun and experience and learning into food production? So we don't separate it out and it becomes kind of mass production, but actually reintegrate it into the ways that we live and what we can get from that in terms of learning and so forth, and connection with the natural environment. Okay, so time's up there. Let's stay moving forward. So that was all about actors and factors and intervention points. And this next section is then about changes that we believe need to come about, and we can connect those to the factors we just wrote up there. But we're talking about what are pockets of the future. So play this card to identify new practices or technologies that's representative of the future system we would wish to see. We had a few kind of things mentioned already. Maybe vertical farming is one example, or yeah, grow your own systems for growing your own food and so forth. That might be a pocket of the future. Innovation gaps. Where do we think there are things that are actually missing at the moment? Nothing's really being done there that needs to be. Systems gardening. So play this card if you see an innovation that needs to be supported and developed. So how do we nurture those? And also something that maybe doesn't exist yet, but we need to actually design it and develop. So you can play that card here. So we're going to take another 10 minutes to do that. We'll do some of the two before. Please try and align your ideas around pockets of the future and new innovations and so forth with what you posted up here. So if it was one of these factors, so the economic ones, you know, things about fair income for supporting producers, then please post it up there. You can even draw a connection, a line back, and we'll do similar to last time, 10 minutes, and then we'll come back again to see what you've come up with, and off we go. Yeah, welcome back. Our time's up, and we want to talk about what you've been posting here in the section around changes, systems changes that need to come about, the pockets of the future, the gaps, the new designs that need to be developed. Maybe just before we go to our coaches, I've seen some of the participants have been creating interesting configurations here. Would you like to share maybe Sushmita, what you were thinking here?
Hi, hello. Yeah, so I found it very interesting about the idea that we do not have like a standardized sort of understanding of what healthy food is, and also understanding how everyone can access that healthy food and the different cultural contexts that are different across the world, right? So what is culturally or like a staple in one part of the world and healthy for that population because they're used to consuming that may not be healthy for another part of the world. And there are so many things that come into play there, including climate and all of that. So, and while organizations have tried to, I think the approach has been largely nutrition, as in preventing malnourishment. So just sort of it's similar to monocultures, but basically making sure that everyone is fed, which is definitely a priority. But then that leads to a larger systemic question about whether what nutritional elements are they lacking and what causes deficiencies and leads to those kinds of diseases that keep them going back to the health system.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the previous conversation about health care, kind of bearing the cost of unhealthy food, but then the question, and how do you re-engineer the economics around that to make it add up? But then the question comes in around what is healthy food, what isn't? And I think, as you know, there's a lot of perspectives on that, isn't there? So it's not just a given, it's more of a kind of political thing in terms of people believe different things about it, right? So it's not so simple. Okay, great. So I think Amit, you two are doing interesting stuff down here. Do you want to share a bit your thinking? I guess this is about governments and lobbies.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so effectively this goes back to this whole thing of redefining us as citizens, well, redefining us as people who are being marketed to rather than us making individual choices about what food we eat, right? So when you start taking into consideration the fact that we are indeed susceptible to marketing, because there is evidence that people are investing a huge amount of time trying to figure this out. So if you start looking at that, there's kind of an intrinsic competition in the market. So you've already started seeing, if you go into the pockets of the future, elimination of sugar from schools, kind of one of the things that people were saying is never going to happen. You're never going to pull it off. They pulled it off easily. People that live here in the UK, we explicitly display calories on menus now. So it doesn't make a very big difference. But after a big meal, you look and you say, maybe I'm not going to have the chocolate sundae if it's 500 calories, that kind of thing. Just there's small interventions that we can make to educate ourselves. In terms of innovation gaps, I think this is kind of along the lines of what the last speaker was talking to. How do we connect the effect, right, of our food choices with what others are doing? Creating some kind of a cradle to grave connection between what manufacturers are doing to us and the health effects, right? There has to be some kind of a way of, even though it's a distributed effect, there must be some scientific method to do this. In terms of systems gardening, yeah, we've seen that the sugar tax works. How can we take that on and expand that into different areas, into fats, into preservatives, all the different kinds of things. I didn't add the high fat sugar and ultra processed foods, sticky, but it's exactly kind of on the same topic. And then from a system design, how do we design a system of politics that isn't influenceable by, the people that have the most money? That's pie in the sky, obviously, but we're here to think, so I'm thinking.
Yeah, Well, it's just opening up the whole system of influence around it, and then instead of incentives and so forth, it's hugely influential. I mean, you look at America and kind of the trajectory it's gone under, the commercialization of food, and then the whole marketing around that. It's and that's you know, been exported globally, so it's kind of a global phenomenon. And the almost direct kind of consequence of industrial foods and that marketing system into a nation, and then the health consequence in terms of diabetes and obesity and so forth. See that around the world. It's quite incredible. And I think maybe part of what you're saying is just getting more realistic about all of that, the actual behavioral and the influences, including, you didn't mention it so much, but lobbying is here quite a bit, as well as marketing and so forth. Okay, the whole set of incentives. All right. So just to jump in then, Adrian, what would you like to pick up here?
Yeah, there were a bunch of great ideas here. One that caught my attention, or one of many that caught my attention, was the community-based land tenure in urban spaces.
Yeah,
And,
so where would I find this one?
That would be, let me make this minimize again. Screen painful. Can you bring it to me?
I'm not sure which one you are, but what's your name? Sorry, on the.
Yeah, that is by social, on the outer ring around social.
Okay, yeah, maybe somewhere here.
It's
Okay,
Tony
well,
Koritsky. I put that one in there because I think it's a real key issue for a lot of urban organizations who are trying to get started, and of course they never have tenure. And it's a huge issue for them because they can never go, is it worth starting with the land, building up the land, you know, making the soil better than it was, and then someone goes, oh no, we want that to build houses on now. And that lack of tenure is absolutely critical, and it kills so many schemes off. I'm lucky enough to live in a local authority where they actually do give long-term tenure to schemes to allow them to do that. But it's not something that's universally there for organizations wanting to do this. It's a big barrier.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I know in the Netherlands, they are attempting this, and the whole issue of creating space and creating legal structures of protection around that space is what allows for emergence, which really allows for people to begin to be willing to risk time, risk capital, to invest in growing, even if it's just for their own personal sustainability or for a business, more likely. But the point of creating a space and giving it legal standing that they can use this on for 5, 10, 15 years at minimal to zero cost is critical for facilitating urban agriculture, and why it's so important. And I guess in some regards, some people would think it as groundbreaking because of, as you could appreciate, urban real estate is extremely expensive and extremely limited. So the powers that be not often don't deem putting aside urban space for agriculture as a high priority in that regard. Furthermore, giving it legal tenure. But the reality is that as we had persons communicate in the second round, if we can begin to communicate the economic benefits and values of growing own food, of short supply chains, of healthy food, it makes the economic and social argument stronger, so that governments are more willing to create spaces with a legal backing for the allowing of UA and UPA.
Yeah, doesn't it also go to the question of kind of efficient use of that space, because it's difficult to really prioritize it, really, isn't it? If it's not actually producing enough food, should we say, or being used effectively enough in a number of different ways. We can talk about efficiency. And I guess that gets to the whole question of urban agriculture, right? It's different from out there in the countryside where you may have more space, to the whole question of efficient use of land. So I think that kind of has to be there. Like if you're just growing, 5 tomatoes on your big plot of land in the center of New York City, it's not going to work. So how do we actually get that efficiency in some sense? so that it does make sense
thing is
and
that
it's actually able to feed people.
there's more to it than efficiency though, because in Manchester, where one of the groups have done this in the Mud group, they have actually worked with local healthcare and social services, so that some people who are like volunteers or vulnerable can get what's called social prescribing, so that if they're vulnerable, they can actually be sent to this place and said, go and join a group, go and participate in something. So the argument for having it is much more than just economic, because it does create social cohesion around the land use as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'd say, because it goes back to one of the things Azra was sharing with us about one of the changes that need to come across, the full cost accounting, right? Not just accounting for the economics and the food production, that's one dimension, but all aspects, as you were saying, and I was kind of saying earlier on, the social and cultural aspects. But I guess it needs to be used efficiently in that holistic sense, shall we say? Yeah.
It's interesting, based on what you folks are saying, Tony, Joss, and Adrian, is there's been a whole move towards, in terms of land tenure, it does not need to be about ownership of the land, because there's a big push for community gardens. So you have a space where, going back to social cohesion, people are coming together to actually grow food. And it may be the 5 tomatoes, but along with it, there is grains being grown, other forms of vegetables being grown with pigs and other animals as well. And that in itself plays a huge role in terms of one of the pockets of future that I noticed was subsidized polyculture transition. So the fact that you have many, instead of having one food crop for many people, how about many food crops that can be, because everybody's not going to have the same eating habits or nutrient needs as well. So the more the focus is on polyculture, that could enable potentially using such aspects, what are called community gardens or victory gardens, to handle the issue with land tenure, but also enable for growth in focus on nutrition.
Yeah, and then I guess and then optimizing for the synergies. And it's interesting, I was back visiting my parents. They have a small organic farm in rural Ireland a couple of months ago during Christmas, and they used to just do plain agriculture. We were talking about monoculture before, and they had sheep and they had cows in fields, and they recently started changing to forestry over the past number of years, and now they do agroforestry. So they don't just have the sheep over there and the trees over there. You go into the forest and you see sheep popping out everywhere and cows, and they look super happy, right? And they're munching away on stuff that's kind of weeds and so forth. So it's the idea of not just optimizing for production, but synergies between different things, and then it gets to kind of the design of those systems, right? Because it's not any two things that are going to go together. You've got like in Asia, the fish in the rice pads, which is amazing synergy because they look after the health of the rice and so forth. Great. So maybe we stay going.
And just to add to that, there is a definite de-risking factor by having more
resilience
of these, right? Yeah, resilience, exactly.
Yeah,
indeed.
Great. So Vesna, what would you like to point us towards?
Well, I will start with the infrastructure. So I like an idea of utilizing different spaces within the cities. This is in connection with providing land for small gardens for the citizens, or maybe how the land is legally protected for this kind of activity. And maybe the innovation part could be also, we are always talking about farmers. Maybe there is an urban farmer, a future job of an urban farmer, utilizing the space, different spaces. In Slovenia, we have one example. There is one urban beekeeper. And going further to governmental and other stakeholders apart is this transparency the whole system of the logistics system, the food chain, and of course the government and all the other stakeholders within this system are, of course, the servants more than the ones with the carrot and the stick and giving the direction. They are more of a servants and more of a facilitators of the background. And going now to the societal part. Well, I see, as I've said, there are two parts: farmers and consumers, and everything in between. Not less important. We are all part of one system, and educating children at school means also we are educating consumers and we are educating the farmers. So it's cooperation starts really in the school. It's not. It's the ownership of both parties to learn, to know how to cooperate together, to co-create, to provide the best solutions for everybody, for the society. And this is the matter of purpose, because this way we all gain the purpose being within being a co-creator of this whole food system. And I see I deal a lot with farmers, I do a lot of talks and everything, and I see them now. They are lost somehow because they don't know what consumers would like to have, and they don't know how to perform their operations. Somebody saying you're not environmental clean and so on. So this way we can connect the whole thing through the co-creating and through educating. And the one thing I particularly liked is this circular way of how to do it, of how to operate within the urban food system. And I can see maybe this circular currency as a great idea, because flow of the money is also it's like a circular currency,
Yeah,
and this could
maybe
also be
Mustafa.
a part of future idea of how to deal within it and to implement another like money.
Should we, maybe Mustafa wants to jump in and share his thinking on that?
Yeah, I can elaborate more. Like circular currency could be the way that we value, that we like care value rather than like money or like the time, or like circular currency could be like sharing the knowledge, or like also maybe like land borrowing or something. Like it could be like different things. You can just value the things, and you can just like switch what the other people needs and etc. And also like the circular currency could be, for example, if you like care the farmers or like to buy something from them, like you might get like extra things or other important things. I don't know like how I can say right now or details, but like the circular currency could be like a thing that we can focus on the values rather than like money or other things.
Yeah, it's going to be key to it, expanding our conception of value here and what we value to something broader than looking at the price on the packet, and really being prepared to pay for that. And I think we talked about some of the changes we see already about changing consumer expectations and so forth. I think people are starting to be prepared to, when you buy organic or something, you're paying for the product, you're also paying for, the environmental benefits and maybe animal welfare and so forth. So I think increasingly people are prepared to pay for those things. but there's a whole economic dimension that needs to be built in there, isn't it? As you say, circular, but many other dimensions that are totally lacking. And then all people go to the supermarket, they just see the price, so they buy the kind of cheapest thing, and it has a whole part of negative externalities because you haven't really got the economy properly built. Anybody else? There's a whole cluster of things here. Anybody else want to talk more about what's going on here? Home economies, economics courses at school.
I mean, I come up with several ideas, but maybe like several of them could be like base for the other things. But it's kind of more things, for example, for me, like lack of empowerment and encouragement, because like I believe we don't question, like for example, when we have like going to market, like we buy some things, but like we maybe like start questioning where this food comes from, or like where how I can grow this in like in the neighborhood, or this kind of like question could be a starting point. And also like what Vesna said, maybe like we start like doing this in the schools. I remember in my childhood, we have a home economics course, and we were focusing on how to like cook, or how to like grow some food. And like it was really nice like to have this kind of knowledge and know like how this system works.
Yeah, I think that's going to what Vesna was saying about the importance of education. But and just to tie together a few things you talk about, best of platforms, information, transparency, education, I think it all goes, and interconnection, it all goes together, doesn't it? So that people can actually see the system they're part of, instead of this big sprawling thing. We don't know anything except for the price on that that bit of food, so that we just buy it based on price. How can we actually see what's going on, be connected? And platforms are going to be important in terms of the data and so forth, to actually get that visibility because of the complexity of all this stuff. And when we have that visibility and we have the education, we know what's going on, then we can actually make the right decisions, right? Instead of a complicated system, we don't know what to do. Okay, so maybe just to hear from one or two participants. Beth, would you like to add anything? What were you thinking about this? You're on mute if you're talking.
Yeah, hi. I'm just really struck. You'll notice every time I mention something, I talk about you know, citizens and the kind of importance of the importance of using that language, not as in any kind of light touch little thing we can do, but actually a fundamental shifting and breaking of how we think of ourselves and each other. But I think the point I made there, like alongside that, there's something about this like re-looking at how we use our spaces. So the example I give there is that really kind of shocking one, that, you know, we use in the UK, certainly we've got more space given over to golf courses than for allotments or community growing in any sense. So there's something about the kind of the shifting how we think of ourselves, but also like kind of that comes with like revaluing and what is like not just what we need, although it is certainly what we need. It's what we value. And you know, do we really, I would say, well, I'm making an assumption that people on this call probably do value growing courses or growing spaces more than golf courses. Although that's not to say some of you don't like golf, or some of you do like golf. But there's just something about kind of what's the space for kind of statements like that, and facts like that, to actually kind of paint a bigger picture of our society and what we're valuing at the minute and the world we need to get to.
Yeah, great. Yeah, because the outcomes we're getting are a product of a system that kind of only values one thing, but it's not definitely not accounting properly for things. And that needs to change in a fundamental way. Okay, so Sanjay, do you want to pick up on any other ones?
Yeah, just to Beth's point, it'll be interesting to see if you can get golf, places to play golf and farm together. I think there's a mechanism to sort of tie the two, you know, so that while you're playing golf, there might be sections where food is actually being grown as well. Few things that struck me were around education that was mentioned, and how in schools you can actually the innovation gap that some had mentioned, although I think there are organizations and countries doing this, actually having kids learn to grow food so they know the source of their food, because it, I think, has a long, in terms of return on investment, spending a few years early on in terms of educating about knowing the food system would have a lasting impact, in my opinion, in how people style their lives around local foods. There was an interesting pocket of future, which I think is also already here, is underutilized parking garages in urban areas for vertical farms. With COVID and across the board, I think there's a lot of urban space that is now available. Buildings that have been put up because more and more people are working either hybrid or from home. And there's a big push, at least in India, for people to go back, in the US, for people to go back to work. So these spaces are empty. So is there a mechanism to make this potentially as a place for growing food? Because space is limited in urban areas. So it might be valuable to look at this as a potential opportunity for pivoting to actually growing food locally.
Yeah, repurposing underutilized
Repurposing.
space. Yeah, in the United States, there's a lot of empty parking space, I think, at this time. Yeah, and even WeWork went bankrupt in the US, didn't they? So we could repurpose all their buildings, right? So as is there anything you'd like to share down here? You're working on?
Yeah, so I started with the problem on the green side, which talked about how it's necessary to have a collaborative decision making on what food crops to be grown, coming from what consumers prefer, and how it goes back to smaller communities in developing countries where the food is actually produced. And then then I went on to talk about how we can have more collaborative decision making, perhaps involve different stakeholders, not just farmers, but also other stakeholders, maybe the people who are working in the scientific professionals, or people who are designing meals for the students in school, and the consumers in general, and form like a portfolio of crops that would be helpful, not just for like consumption, but also for environment, to sort of increase the biodiversity and then help in regeneration of soil. And that's something that I spoke about there. I think that's how I assessing the needs and then giving it back in a form of a charter that can be implemented on ground would be something that might help with the complexity of challenges that we face in our current food systems.
Yeah, so it ties into the whole how we make decisions about land use in cities, as we're talking about, and is there a possibility for communities to be involved in that and to express, you know, how the land wants to be used and so forth. Great. Okay, so
just before you brought me up, I was just listening to what Sanjay was telling, and I remember reading this article that in London that they have been using these World War II tunnels as a means of growing vegetables. So that's something that's innovative and also using up the spaces which are no longer used.
Right. So maybe just to pick up on a few more participants. So Sydney, would you like to add anything? Or Nadeem, maybe, if you'd like to add anything?
Well, I'll give it a try. Hi. I was trying to look for some information about what was Beth saying. Sorry, French accent, so I think Beth is the right way to pronounce it. I'm actually just reading Donut Economics, where literally they are talking about this idea of how we call citizens rather than users, and how just changing the name shift the whole perspective of the way we empower people to act through the community. I can't remember exactly what was the case today and the exact data, but basically, whenever we refer to people as user of a community, they tend to litter more, they tend to just use it more, and so in a more extractivist way of things, while when we talk about people as citizens, they tend to be more stewards of the community, of the land, and so on and so forth. So I think definitely working myself as a designer, try to avoid calling people users. If we have a specific type of user, let's just call them the way they are. If they are, mom carrying a baby when they are doing grocery shopping, that's what they are. They're not just supermarket users. But I think we tend to abstract things sometimes. It's very important that we don't. And that actually jumps from what I was just exactly the opposite now. What I just found is, and maybe that's me being really complicated, but I find it generally very confusing in terms of we have a lot of information right now on the board and they're all really relevant, but no, it's more on the idea of how do we take this forward? And I think maybe just having one step in the middle where we start to abstract dynamics in the systems. Maybe I'm jumping for the next exercise, maybe not, sorry, but and so there is multiple moments where we start to talk about, for instance, power imbalance. And there are multiple examples of power imbalance in between farmers, agrotech, power imbalance in between northern countries, southern countries, and so on and so forth. And I think what would be really great is if we can just sometimes look at these kind of specific dynamics. And then obviously there are multiple effects throughout the system of these dynamics, as I mentioned, with farmers, with countries, with citizens, and maybe looking at ways that we could solve these ones rather than boiling the oceans by trying to get the most thoroughly map of everything that's happening and then being lost in the middle, not knowing where to start swimming. That makes sense. That were just things that I might at the moment. Might not be the exact answer to what you were looking for, but on the spot, sorry.
No, thank you. We should stop calling them citizens, call everybody farmers, right? And that would kind of inspire them to start growing. Nadeem, was there anything you wanted to add in here? Nope. Okay, so Adrian, anything else you want to pick up?
Well, one thing, well, a couple two things. So, I remember when I was working on the urban food systems movement back in the Caribbean, and just to kind of touch on Angela's point, and we were kind of thinking about a marketing campaign, and the idea was to have a whole set of different professions, cut in half. So the top half would be, if you're a doctor, lawyer, teacher, whatever, and the bottom part would be, farming gear to show that everyone could pretty much farm, no matter who you are, we all can be farmers, kind of thing. That's one of the ideas we want to get across, that, we all can farm. But of course, that speaks to us having the knowledge of doing that. And that's why I really liked this idea. Someone talked about creating platform systems to create a stronger and supportive intra-farmer network. Building a farmer cultures, I believe it is, and having shared learn spaces. I like whoever spoke that to kind of touch on it, and I'll kind of comment on it afterwards. But I thought that was a good contribution. So who was that spoke on that?
That was my sticker. It comes yes. It comes from a friend's once initiative. He used Miro to bring farmers together in Vaud in Switzerland, and just seeing the effect of his Zoom broke off. He was the facilitator, and the farmers on Miro continued collaborating without him needing to be there. That already shows the value. And I think that it comes from the idea of really creating more resilient systems for farmers by creating this supportive network and more communication flows maybe between urban farmers and rural farmers as well. So really bridging or breaking this huge gap. Maybe it's not possible to break this gap, obviously, but just to bring these two dimensions closer together. And creating shared learning, also peer support. And maybe it starts from there, and then that's why I put the systems gardening. Things will emerge from these conversations, perhaps.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, and I like that because what you can do even on that kind of platform is to have segments of different kind of farmers. So you have persons who, maybe hobbyists who are just kind of growing, lifestyle farming, some carrots in the background and want to get some tips on how to make my carrots look nice and orange and whatever. But then you have other farmers who this is for them a business and they are looking for more more detailed information, and they can get that from other farmers of similar elves. And if you could have those nodes all learning from each other, so you would have self-identification, which you have in any system, and of course cross-learning and cross-fertilization across these different types of farmers, from the hobbyists down to the professional. It can create a real hub of learning and information that then can benefit the system, much more than the sum will be of its parts. So I love this personally.
Gabriela, would you like to share what you're thinking here about schools and
sure. No, I was thinking that we value very much the growing food, but it's sometimes a bit difficult to learn how to grow it correctly and how to make it productive, or like how to make a good use of everyone's resources. And with more people living, I mean, since decades, right? But with more people living in urban systems, there's a lack of access to land, to cultivate land. So there's a lot of urban farming activities, and I think it's great, like to grow tomatoes in pots. But I'm not sure how efficient that is. Sometimes tomatoes are not suitable for growing in certain under certain climates, so maybe that's not the best thing to grow, and maybe something else could be much better or more productive. And this is connected to the fact that we all live on this planet, but we don't have the right to, even, I'm not saying owning some land, but the right to access to some land to cultivate. So I think it's very much connected, because education on how to grow vegetables or how to grow your food should be something part of the basic education, but together with not how, like technically how to grow it, but together with what is suitable to be grown, how does it grow, is it possible to grow it in small pots, or is it possible to grow it like on only with water, with no soil, and this goes together with nutrition, and with the maybe reconsidering the natural right of having access to land as citizens of this planet Earth. Why is that? Why does land need to belong to someone who is paying it with money for it? I don't know. That for me, it's an idea that we all accept, but it's a bit weird.
Yeah, interesting topics emerging here. I mean, this one about ownership of land or land usage, because it's very different in traditional country setting versus city, isn't it? Because in a city, space is incredibly regulated, whereas and many people own small bits of space, as opposed to the country. We think of farming, people owning land, farmers, and quite a bit of it, and knowing how to grow. Whereas in cities, you have a lot of people, highly regulated space, they own a little bit of space, and they don't know how to grow, and they don't think they're growers either. So it's quite a different dynamic, and a lot of it's going to play into how we use space, the public policy around how space is used, and quite often locked up, right, for different reasons that we can't access it and use it.
Yeah, actually, we have to get to. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I resonate a lot with the last part of the conversation, and I mean is how we identify the role of farmers and the connection within the client, let's say, and in the city. So for us, this has been a really nice point with farmers markets. I co-founded a farmers market in Bogota 14 years ago, and I've been working with the slow food there and here in Spain, and currently based in Barcelona. So these are touching points between all of these different dynamics, and there are great opportunities to bring what are the necessities of a farmer and what are the connections with the people in the cities. And as well, now that we were talking about cities and how we use or redefine the space and the use in the cities, there is a conciliation that we need to do between agri-food tech and what we do as citizens in terms of technologies, or how we use our freest time and how we connect with what it means food, because we proposed it as well a couple of years ago here in Barcelona, a couple of using a dead space between buildings, for instance, to grow different hydroponics or different mushrooms or different products that you can use in this space. And you can use as well your time to connect with these food systems in urban areas in terms of what does it mean to grow food, why we are so disconnected to these dynamics. We take it for granted that we can go to a supermarket and there's going to be always availability of the same products. We don't have any connection with the producers, and we don't have any understanding of the food value chain. So these are going to help us to understand a little bit more of these dynamics and how we can add more products, more different, like biodiversity and season of these products. And we have to close the gap or the circle there. And in terms of we add what happened when the food scraps. I mean, food waste is a huge issue. And here we have been proposing a very nice social and urban composting community. So in the same farmers market in the Slough of Barcelona, we have been composting with the community there. And for this process in the last 4 years, we have composted more than 55 tons of food scraps with the same community, with the same people that we volunteer there in the city. And this is a regulation from the EU level that there is no longer available from cities to let those fruit scraps go outside of the city to compost in a place that no one knows what happened there. It needs to be composted in situ and in a social way. So there is a big opportunity to start growing a more vibrant community in not only how we produce food, but then what happened with that.
Make composting great again. I think it should be our slogan. Right?
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's totally amazing.
Yeah.
Put your hands there. It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks a lot for sharing that, Julian. Interesting insights. And well, I think our time's up, but we've been unpacking lots of ideas here. I think we get the idea this is quite complex. How can we really see the emergence of a new system in cities? It's going to be quite different from what we know, this kind of dichotomy between consumers in the city, and they're passive and they don't know anything about food. They don't think of themselves as farmers. They don't like composting or anything like this. And then, the farms out there where they grow the food. And I think that whole dichotomy is really has been breaking down over the past couple of decades. And something really different needs to emerge in our cities about how we use space, about how we represent this system, and we're able to see the system, and it's not this big opaque intermediated centralized system. We just buy things off the shelf and all we see is the price, but we actually need new values kind of built into it, and really strong accounting system for all of these, so we can start to make the right choices, start to see what's going on in the system, start to connect it in new ways, and break down that divide between producers and consumers, so we can be food prosumers. And I think there's a lot of different dimensions to this, but it's been great to unpack some of those with you, and discuss some of the challenges and the opportunities, the pockets of the future, the innovations. And thank you very much for your time. We're going to wrap up now. Going back to what you're mentioning, Sydney, coming out of this, we'll take away what you shared with us. As you say, it's quite a complicated, you might call it a mess, but we'll work on that and try to synthesize it. We'll share back with you. We have your emails from your listing from joining the event list. So we'll share back with you a PDF synthesis of what we created here, so that we and other people who didn't join today can see what we came up with and get a better idea of these ideas, and how we might apply a systems approach to this, and hopefully we can go away, and other people can also, when they see that, and try to make some of these changes happen, because this is a big transformation that needs to come about in our world. So we'll wrap up there.
Josh, if I may add 20 seconds.
Yep.
Having worked with some of the Native American elders, some of what they've said is in terms of ancient wisdom and indigenous knowledge, and in terms of systems, food is spirituality. We should never forget that aspect, just as in terms of we are looking at redesign of systems, that those are core tenets they talk about. So in terms of ownership that we talked, is ownership really required? Because previously everything was public commons, you know? So these are things we should think about in the big picture, and never forget the aspect of spirituality. And it's an important component as well.
Yeah, and we shouldn't just think of fixing problems in our food system, but unlocking the potential outside of it, as you say, spirituality, but also community and social connections and all of this stuff. We were talking about that, the way this can be an amazing food has always been an amazing platform, whether it's a table or whatever, a restaurant for connecting us and bringing out the community and social aspects. So there's huge potential in it as well as challenges. So great. Let's leave it there. Well done, everyone, for joining. Thank you very much to the coaches. We will wrap up and we'll get back to you with the synthesis within a couple of days or 2 weeks. Thank you all for joining.